Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Ronald Reagan.
Hello, Ronald Reagan. I imagine you have some things to talk about today. Folks, if you're not aware, Ronald Reagan is a immigration attorney from Yakima.
Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. The Yakima County coroner's race is really heating up. We've got a couple of really good candidates for the county coroner. And do you mind if we get into the nitty-gritty?
No. I want to definitely hear about the Yakima County coroner case. That's one of the things that have been on the top of our minds here. Just give us a brief rundown, then let's move it to immigration, shall we?
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe we'll just skip that. We'll come back to it. But
okay.
So I want to first make a recommendation on a book. There's a book called Defiant Braceros. It's about the Bracero program, which was like the earliest guest worker program that started around World War II. And really family separation, if you think about it, has been part of our immigration system since that time. And this book actually talks about the effects of family separation in bringing men away from their families to work in our fields, and the consequence that can have. And it's interesting because I'd never really thought about that. And guest worker programs are sort of like supposed to be the safe type of immigration reform that people want, but even something sort of banal like that can result in a form of family separation that can have really negative consequences. I mean, imagine if your dad was just not there half the time. And this is what's happening now is obviously much worse. I wanted to talk about, I was at an immigration lawyer conference this last week, and there was a liaison meeting with ICE, and they had a representative from ICE litigation. So ICE is broken up into all these different parts, and he wasn't taking questions about enforcement and removal operations. So those are the meatheads that go around kicking in doors and stuff like that. He was just taking questions about litigation, but he went out of his way to talk about the process of what's going on at the border, because I think he knew that it was going to get brought up. But also there was, to me, a sense that he feels bad about it.
And let
not
me
bad
just,
enough to quit.
And let me put this.
Yeah.
Let me put this in proper context, because Kirstjen Nielsen, who is the head of Department of Homeland Security, or I should say the Department of Homeland Security Secretary, supposedly behind the scenes is against this program. And she is tweeting out that we do not have a policy of separating families at the border, period. And
right. And so
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of what this guy was saying. So he explained the process is, look, this came down from the DOJ, so from Jeff Sessions, a strict enforcement policy on a criminal issue. CBP, which is a different part of Homeland Security, they Customs and Border Protection, they arrest the people, they transfer them to the marshals, which is another part of the government. All that ICE does is transport people from CBP custody or marshal custody into the custody of Health and Human Services. So all we're doing is this little tiny part of what's happening. It's not us. He didn't say he's actually against it. There were jeers from the audience and people yelling out, how are you going to reunify these people? And they weren't taking any other questions on that issue, which was controversial. But it was interesting to me to hear, and when Kirstjen Nielsen tweeted that, I saw a lot of people saying she's a liar. I don't actually think she's lying. It's not a Homeland Security policy. It's a DOJ policy. So she's playing a semantical game. It's not us, it's somebody else. And that's how this stuff happens.
Yep.
By people who only have a limited role. Look, I'm just the guard. I just
Following
drive this
orders.
truck.
I'm just following orders. I have a very limited participation in this. I mean, this is how horrible things happen. When nobody seems to have any accountability or responsibility for it, everybody can say, like, my involvement in this is so narrow that I can't possibly implicate anything. I can't be implicated for any responsibility in any of this. And therefore, it happens. And I'm just here. I mean, on some level, right? Like, that's what everybody in the whole country on some level is doing. Like, I didn't vote for Trump. It's not my fault. Well, it's not my policy. I'm just, driving my car like I always did, or I'm just, transporting prisoners like I always did. I don't get to choose who becomes the prisoners. This is exactly how history looks back and says, how did this happen? When people ask that question, how did this happen? This is how it happens, where everybody's involved, but nobody has any responsibility. Everybody's able to convince themselves, I got nothing to do with this.
I've had a couple of experiences recently with some ICE officers who they won't come out and say, like, this is bullshit and I'm sorry. But it's clear that they're trying to do a thing where it's like, I'm cool. I just want you to know. Like, I'm not really down with this. Without saying that,
right,
they're sending these vibes. And it's like, we have to start, I think, people are asking right now, one of the big questions is like, what can I do? If you know somebody that works at any of these agencies or sub-agencies or GEO or whatever, I think you have to, if they're in your life in a meaningful way, sit down and have a talk with them and let them know that it's not okay and that you're not okay with it and that they need to make hard choices. And it is hard. I know another officer recently told me, like, I'm just waiting to get out of here. I'm a couple years away from my pension. I'm hearing a lot from these officers about their pension. They're always throwing that out because I think that some of them do feel guilty. And it would be hard to be a year away from your pension and to quit. But we have to have people making those tough decisions, and we have to be reaching out to those people in our lives, if you have them, to let them know that you will help and you'll do what it takes to help them make those tough choices. But that's exactly how things happen. You have, people at the highest levels wanting to get away with sort of skirting responsibility. But I wanted to. This
is what those billionaires who go and give money to politics, this is what they should be doing, if you ask me. Tom Steyer or, even like, Bill Gates or any of these people. Why don't you step up and create a ICE officer pension fund? Go step up, spend a couple of bucks and allow people to quit from these horrific jobs.
That's actually a really good idea. And somebody one of my colleagues who actually works in Brooklyn posted today, people keep asking, what do I do? And he said, do literally anything. Like, the system is failing. We have maybe 6 months until the whole thing falls apart. And so the video you played of people shouting down Mike Pence, find out where candidates or representatives are going to be, go there, shout them down, and don't be satisfied. I was talking to a fellow attorney at this conference, and he said, people say call your representative, but my representative is Adam Schiff. And so he was kind of acting like he didn't have to do anything. And I said, well, I don't know anything really about how he is on immigration. How is he on immigration? And he looked at me and was like, well, I don't really know, but, he's Adam Schiff. Right. And that's not good enough because, we're in this because of both sides. One of the worst immigration bills we have is from 1996, and Bernie voted for it. So there's no safe corner to turn to. I don't care if your representative is Adam Schiff or if your senator is Bernie Sanders. You should go and make make them feel uncomfortable too. And
Or if it's Jeff
yeah,
Merkley and you should say, thank you, please keep it up.
Right. I mean, that's exactly right. Jeff Merkley is the only good one. Some of them are good people. But the last thing I'll say, our State Department publishes country conditions reports every year for every country, like a human rights country condition report. And I would encourage your listeners, but also if the listeners are engaged in Facebook battles or whatever with people, to take a minute and read one of these from El Salvador or Nicaragua or Honduras or Mexico, to see what's really going on. One phenomenon I see from immigration judges is that they've maybe been to like Cancun,
right,
which is like going to Las Vegas. It's in the middle of a desert, but it's this fake thing that's not real. And they think, well, this person's fleeing something. Why don't they just move to Cancun, as if it were that easy? And things in these places are really bad. And that's why people continue to come here. Somebody on the radio today said, well, we need to have a deterrent. We have to be this cruel to be a deterrent. But the deterrent is that huge numbers of people die crossing the border. It's extremely dangerous. Like, the deterrents exist. And so take a look at what people are fleeing. Take a look at what's going on there. And you don't have to go to some, liberal lefty outlet. Go to the State Department and see what they're saying. Right. It's horrible. So anyhow.
Ronald Reagan, appreciate the call. Next time you will catch us up on what's going on in that coroner race.
All righty. Sounds good.
Appreciate the call.